Welcome everybody to Bobby Talks, ... Those dots are there to tell you that there's always more to the story today. I sit down with, the donkeys of the room, not the jackasses, but the donkeys. I sit down with the Democrats, the Democratic voters, and it's going to be an interesting show because I have a previous registered Republican.
Still am.
Yep. Voting for Biden. Is it fair to say that out loud?
Correct.
Okay. And I have a Democrat and Nathan Adams. Nathan, how you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Kyle Miller, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
So everybody, I just want to preface a few things. Number one, everybody is an average Joe here. We're just talking about this off camera. We all have our opinions, but I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. I've expressed to you how difficult it was to actually get Republicans and Democrats to come on and share their voice. So, I know we have a whole bunch of Facebook questions from Republicans, or what I assume to be Republicans, that they're going to ask you guys. You being a Republican, but voting Democrat this time around is going to be a very interesting take on today's show.
Yeah.
So with that being said, this is part 2 of a 4-part political month. We are getting about 2 weeks until the election. And we are, one 24-hour cycle from the last debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So let's start here. I want to start with you, Kyle. Actually, I want to start with you, Nathan. Why are you a Democrat? Why do you call yourself a Democrat? Why do you feel that you need to be a part of a team?
Well, I actually, you say it like out loud, like I've never actually thought of myself as a Democrat.
Okay.
Like I've never said to myself, this is what I am, this is what I believe in. And actually, if we're talking specifics, I think I do so more align on the independent spectrum, because I don't hate everything the Republican Party or conservatives stand for, because it used to be, and in some respects it is, the party of ideas, okay, right? I mean, it is the party of Abraham Lincoln. That does get tossed around a lot in the political spectrum.
Yeah.
But in this case, I'm voting for Joe Biden just because it's not really me voting on policy per se, because, and I do think that Joe Biden has some good ideas. It's not all, apples, it's not all roses, right?
Sure.
But I'm more or less just voting on character. And decorum.
Sure.
That's my candidate.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that on my independent show, about character over policy or policy over character. Before we dive into that, let's kind of make a quick transition to, and I know it's not a quick one probably, why a Republican would be willing to vote for a Democrat this time around.
I think it has a lot to do with what he said, decorum. Back in 2016, I was one of those people who said, there's no way this is going to be as bad as people think it is.
Sure.
Like, I was like, the media is making this to be like something it's not.
Fear-mongering us.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And he's a businessman. Like, he's going to know how to run the economy.
And I totally understood why people did vote for him.
Absolutely. And I still have so many conservative ideals and values, but people don't realize that, like, Joe Biden is like a moderate Democrat.
Right.
I would hardly say that he's liberal.
Right.
I think that he, obviously running on the Democratic ticket, he's going to be socially liberal, because that's what's going to get Democrats to vote for you. But if you really look at his politics, I think it's a lot of conservative ideals when it comes to the economy.
He's pretty close to that independent spec. Back when, who was the gentleman that, Lieberman?
Okay.
Joseph Lieberman. Do you remember him or not? You guys might be a little younger than
Yeah, I remember the name, I know.
Lieberman used to give the Senate, or the Congress, a hell of a lot of problems because they never knew which side he was going to vote on.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where, which is the way I think it should be.
Absolutely.
We should know that we're all these votes are guaranteed. I know.
Yeah, and they do all of that.
And that's actually happened a lot in the Supreme Court this year. You have seen notoriously conservative judges. Is it Judge Roberts? Is that what I'm thinking of? Or
I'm not sure the names.
I'll have to look it up. I'm not sure. But was a conservative. He's a very conservative judge, and he's been voting, the other way, and it's been like making people like they thought they had the votes and they don't.
Right.
And that's right. I think that's exactly how a voting body should be.
Yeah, for sure. So go back to what you were saying, though.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess just as time has gone on, I feel like there's just a lot of things that you can't really stick up for. I went from thinking like, there's no way this is going to be that bad to like, yeah, I can kind of see why people are upset about that, but I don't think it was like this. And like, I'm like, oh, the media's just making it seem to be worse. But time and time again, I think that what's the saying that if someone tells you who they are, believe them, right? And I think that we've had Donald Trump tell us time and time again who he is. I mean, I don't think you have to look any further than his Twitter, which is a fantastic follow, by the way.
Yeah.
For someone like me who loves comedy and I love inappropriate comedy, I think he's hilarious.
Yeah.
These debates, not supposed to be funny.
No.
But I tell you what, I laughed harder during those than I have in any movie that I've seen in the last 5 years.
If you can, it's funny because I understand why you're saying that. I guess I can't do that anymore because I just understand the serious nature.
It's scary.
It's scary that I'm looking, and I got to be honest with you. And I did not feel. I thought Biden actually performed well in the debate in the sense of.
Well, think about and he performed well because the expectations that Donald Trump put on him.
Well, right, but I mean, I thought that if Biden really showed up and didn't look like he was there, couldn't answer questions,
and I was worried there in the beginning because like you saw
had that
his
raspy voice.
Well, he had a raspy voice, and like you looked at his complexion
Yeah.
on the lights and how it hit him compared to Donald Trump. It's like he looks weak right now.
He did, yeah, he did,
And
and
I
I
was
thought
like-
he rallied well.
He did. Yeah.
I don't think he was. I don't think he did great on answering all of the questions. I
Not
thought
necessarily.
Trump really nailed him on that one where he's like, "No, you're on number 2." When he was like first point, and then he nailed it, and then he goes, "Now third point." He goes, "No, you're on 2." So it's just little moments like that. But yeah, Trump. I mean, that whole debate was set the tone by Trump.
What Trump needs to do, and this is what I was saying to family members. What he has to do, he has to put Joe Biden at the center, and he can't because he's Donald Trump and he loves the attention.
Right.
If he at these debates, instead of interrupting Joe Biden, actually answered policy questions and put him on the spotlight, you have to put your opponent on the spotlight and what they've done and what they haven't done.
Right.
That's what he has to do, and he can't do it.
The problem is I don't think Donald Trump wants to talk policy.
No, he wants to talk about him.
Well, he wants to talk about him, but I think he doesn't. I don't think he wants to talk about policy because I think he's smart enough to understand that's not a strong suit with his base.
No, yeah, and
his base wants him to go after them. They like the Sleepy Joe names. They like that type
they love
of
it. Crooked Hillary, yeah. I honestly think, and you chime in here, I thought this back in the beginning of the year before all this COVID stuff happened. I said I said going in the year, it's like it doesn't matter. It's really hard to vote out an incumbent who's on a thriving economy.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
Right.
But then COVID happened.
Right.
And I said, this is it. This is going to be the telling sign if he handles this well, because that's why I think George Bush got elected again in 2004, not because he was, he had his issues, but he rallied the country after 9/11.
He did a great job.
And he
of
brought
doing that.
everybody together, even though what he did later, that's...
Regardless of the policy and how long it went on and the wars and whatnot, he did a really good job.
He was a leader who brought us together, and I was like, if Donald Trump can do that now with COVID, then nobody's going to...
As a Republican, question to you. Doesn't George Bush look a hell of a lot better now?
So here's my thing. So I was 9 when he was elected in 2000. And I was then...
hanging chads. You were all over that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I know a little bit about it, mostly from the How I Met Your Mother episode.
Yeah.
But
great episode.
Yeah, and then so I think I was really molded by that by post 9/11 because I remember what life was like as a kid before 9/11 and how carefree everything
and
was.
I do not, so I know.
And that I think that kind of had some sort of effect on me. So after 9/11, there was that whole patriotism thing. Growing up I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, which is so funny enough that Nebraska is one of the only states that splits their electoral votes. There's 3 of them, and one or two, I can't remember what. It comes from Douglas County, which is where Omaha is, because it's the most populous part of the state, and they constantly go blue.
Right.
It is a very liberal
but everything
around it,
is
all the farmland,
Yeah.
and then you have Iowa right across the border, who was one of the first states to legalize gay marriage.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird.
That's weird.
It's a really weird bubble of people.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you get out of that Omaha Council Bluffs area, which Council Bluffs is the city on the other side of the river from Omaha, it gets so red.
Yeah.
And it's so funny when you go to the outskirts of the town, when you're entering Republican territory.
Yeah.
And so,
don't you kind of feel that everywhere you go, though, because of I will say this. One thing Republicans do, and I think maybe a better job of, you can talk about the extremes or whatnot, but they really showcase their pride for their country.
Absolutely.
Right? And I mean,
there's never a question, and even with Donald Trump, there's never a question of
does he love America?
Does he love America?
Right.
And but I'll tell you what, though, that pride that they show in their country, I think that's what's ultimately going to be their downfall. Right. Because now they've started to use that as a rallying cry against people who support Black Lives Matter, and all the other things. They say, during the gay pride parade or whatever, you have people saying America this, America that. Somehow loving America has gone from being proud of to be from America, and it's gone to, if you don't like it, get out of here.
It's the idea, though,
It's
of
like
the
you have to love it
1950s America
unconditionally.
that they kind of are still, not all of them. I'm not going to generalize, but it's just that's kind of how it feels, though, at times, right? Let me ask you this question. So you are a Republican who's voting Biden this time around, and we've talked about character over policy. That seems to be the tipping scale for all three of us here. I talked about on the last episode of my show with the Independents about it doesn't matter to me how successful your economy is or how successful your business is. If the HR department is getting a bunch of emails and messages on a daily about how the internals are being ran so poorly and the people there feel like they're not being heard and discriminated against or what all, like, and I use the Washington football team example about how there's all that turmoil taking place inside of their own business, but they're wildly successful. I just think that's such a perfect analogy of where we are. It's like you said, before COVID happened, the economy was doing fine. He took, Obama and them, they dropped it from the recession that they were given, and Obama and Biden did a really good job getting the economy back on, and you have to give credit to Trump for continuing that.
Yeah,
we got as low as like
he built on a foundation that he was given.
Yeah,
Correct.
but he's also, but you have to. I mean, you can do a lot of things to make damage to that, and I think I do think he's right on the China talks. I do think he's right, maybe not necessarily in his execution of it, but I think he's absolutely right to say that China is not playing fairly, and whoever set up these deals a long time ago are. They're wrong. They're bad deals. You shouldn't have a quota on how much U.S. can send you, but we can take everything you have.
Yeah, and I agree with I think Obamacare's helped a lot of people, and the one thing that I didn't like about was that mandate that if you couldn't afford the health insurance, you got penalty on your taxes every year because you couldn't afford it. But so he was in a way that was right to get rid of that mandate. But I also don't. They said they want to repeal and replace Obamacare, but they have not put forth a plan that comes even close to that. They say they're protecting pre-existing conditions, but I take that with a grain of salt.
I'm not sure where we're at now. What's it, 7-8 years since the Affordable Care Act?
Right, and it's like give me a solution, and they haven't. They just say we're going to repeal it. Okay, with what?
But it's a good talking point, though.
Yeah,
right. It does. It gets
that base
rallies
going.
The base.
Yeah, sorry.
So character over policy. So we all kind of agree on that portion, and it's so much so that it's made you go to the top of your list.
Right.
Well, even like the Lincoln Project, that is a notoriously conservative group,
right?
And they have gone out against Donald.
Yeah.
Like that tells you all you need to know almost.
Yeah. That's like the
John
biggest
Bolton,
conservative group, like think
John
tank.
Bolton, who was his national security advisor, has gone against him. You have Cindy McCain, like just so many people that are of high, like General Mathis,
right?
Like is going against Donald. It's like that, like these people. They just know. They know.
It's because they're conservatives that also have common sense and know that you can't alienate half of your population and still expect to be successful in politics.
John Kasich, Republican governor from Ohio, was at the Democratic National Convention speaking on behalf of Joe Biden.
That was a.
It's really powerful.
Yeah,
it's like people are putting country above party.
Yeah. Last show, it was brought to my attention about non-negotiables. I don't know if you guys caught the last episode or not, but people generally vote on their non-negotiables.
Yep.
What are the things in their life or the things that they vote on where if the opponent was to run against this idea or this non-negotiable of yours, like what are those for you, Kyle? Like, for example, the last episode, Jay Williams talked about how the economy, abortion, those types of things are non-negotiables. He is not going to be for anybody that would be for abortion, that would go against the economy or raise taxes on the middle class and all these things. Those are his non-negotiables. That's what he votes on. What are those for you?
So it's going to be funny saying this as a self-proclaimed conservative, but for me, it's I think that the Affordable Care Act was actually a fantastic idea. I think that there's this misconception that like the government shouldn't be involved in anything. I think the government has a duty to provide us with a lot of things, but they shouldn't have the power to make us have those things, I guess, is how I want to say it. So for me, I think a lot of the things that I would normally say is a non-negotiable is out the window this time because there's just no way that I can say something's non-negotiable if Joe Biden is for or against it because I just can't bring myself to vote. So there is no non-negotiable,
right.
and that's what's different than every other election.
It's not the same as 2016 where people like, well, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. It's like I don't believe that's a factor this time. Some people would say that, but
do you believe Joe Biden is a credible candidate?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he's perfect, and the argument is that he spent how many years, 47 years, he's a career politician. But I mean, you talk about like in 2008, like he helped revive the economy after the recession, and with Obama, he signed fighting climate change in 2007, getting rid of emissions. He oversaw the confirmation of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like all these the Criminal Violence Act in 1993, the Violence Against Women's Act, which saw like 2.1 million cases like go down of domestic abuse against women. So it's like he's done things, and people it's talking points.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
well, I just mean, do you think at this stage in his life he's a credible candidate?
Because
it does feel
he would be the oldest president ever if he were elected, and that's another argument. But Donald Trump's only like 3 or 4 years different.
No, he's 73, and we're Joe Biden's 77, I believe.
He'd be 78 after inauguration. Yeah.
Do you believe him to be mentally cognitive and all there?
Yeah,
you do.
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you?
This is a tough question for me because working at a golf course, we get a lot of seniors.
Sure.
And I've had a lot of people who are of Joe Biden's like age come in golf. And I can't really say that there's a lot of them that I would say, hey, you want to be president?
Yeah.
I think that having the experience and having people in your corner is sometimes a more important part of leadership.
And what does he say too? He says, I'm going to listen to the scientists. It's like, it's not just also him leading. He's going to listen.
Yeah. I think the one thing that doesn't go out the window with your, as you get older is the sense of like common sense, essentially. And so common sense would be listening to scientists about COVID, wearing a mask, mandating that.
I don't know if that is common sense because I work in a school, but what I'm saying is I think it's a very huge attribute of a leader is to not sit there and say, this is my way or the highway. I know all when I don't. You should listen. I mean, that's a huge attribute of a leader. It's a huge intangible to sit there and say that I'm not a specialist on every single topic and subject matter in the world. I have to listen to the experts in that field, and then I get to make a decision after what I've heard.
And then you hear this week Donald Trump calling Fauci an idiot.
Right.
Like the top disease infectious expert who's served 6 administrations. He's a apolitical, non-bipartisan. He's just looking out for the health and safety of Americans. And Trump's coming out attacking him because he doesn't like, that he calls his rallies super spreader events, which, they kind of
has been proven to be true.
Yeah, ask Herman Cain.
But doesn't that bother you? So I'm gonna push back. I mean, we're talking here, right? So I just kind of want to make sure. So I agree with everything you just said in the sense of like, yes, absolutely, with super spreaders. But what I want to hit on is that isn't it a little bit hypocritical to have that proven to be true, these super spreader rally events that he has? But if you remember over the summer at the top of the George Floyd murder, and then you had all of these protests that were taking place all across the country. There was legitimately media, and not just news media, but like article media talking about print media, talking about how those weren't proven to spread. Do you remember this? Not proven to spread any of those things.
Yes.
Isn't that hypocritical? Because anybody that read that was like, okay, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Very true, and I understand the point. I guess my rebuttal to that is while people want to go out and express their freedom of speech, and that's totally fine. My thing is Trump is the leader, and he's supposed to listen to experts, and the experts obviously wouldn't recommend what these people were doing.
Sure.
But Trump holding these rallies, he is encouraging and he is inviting people and saying, come to my rally. He's openly putting them, where these individuals, they're making their choice and they're going out and doing it.
Right.
If Trump wasn't holding these rallies, these people wouldn't be there.
It's one thing for you to have to, you to wear a mask, and that's up to you. It's another thing for me to go up to you and be like, hey, you don't have to wear your mask no more. The Supreme Court said you don't have to wear your mask no more. That's another thing, right? It's like the encouragement of doing so. I want to get back to the non-negotiables, though, Nate. What are your non-negotiables? What if somebody was to, take away, lesbian, gay communities' rights?
Yeah, I guess that would be a non-negotiable.
Like, what are you? Do you know what your non-negotiables are?
Well, I don't know. In this case, right? It's like, dude, it's like night and day. Like who you're voting. Like nothing could really change my mind. But LGBTQ, community, big thing.
Right.
It's a huge thing.
Right.
And no president, Donald Trump has worked actively against the community. Like he signed a law banning transgenders from joining the military. He's enacted executive orders that allow employers to discriminate based on sexual orientation. Like he has done so much backwards.
Mike Pence was
Mike Pence, the big one. Gay conversion therapy. That's a whole other rabbit hole you want to go down. So that's a big non-negotiable for me. And honestly, pro-choice is a big thing. I'm pro-choice, but I have to emphasize that just because I am pro-choice doesn't mean I am pro-abortion. Right?
Okay. Because that's a big talking point. I'm gonna have you come back to that.
No, but you see what I'm saying? It's like just because I support. Basically, what I'm saying is, it's nobody's right for me to tell what a woman should do with her own body.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't appreciate them telling me what I want to do with mine. It's not right.
Right.
And you ask any woman about this upcoming election season, and it's like they know that their rights are on the ballot because there's heavy talk with this upcoming Supreme Court confirmation that Roe v. Wade could potentially be overturned. I think it would be difficult to do. But that conversation, the fact that
it's always
the fact
scary.
that it comes up, that's terrifying. And I think women know with Joe Biden that that's not going to be, at least for this time, they'll be safe. That's all the things Donald Trump says about women.
I kind of want to have this conversation about abortion. I am a new independent to the world, right? But I have always been on the left side of things. I've always been, at one point I was a proud Democrat. I think they have lost their way. I think they have sold their soul at times. The party, not the people, the party.
Yep.
The party, I'm not sure even knows what they are anymore. The people, they need to get organized. I've always felt though I agree with you when it comes to women's choice. But when it comes to abortion, in the sense of abortion, I've always felt like the Democratic Party is backwards on this issue. And what I mean by this is that every single civil liberty, the Democratic Party is there to progress and is on your side, right? Gay movement, transgender movement, blacks, whites, women, whatever. They are always there to progress your freedoms. But the idea that they're pro-life in every aspect, except when it comes to abortion. And I understand, to me, it's not a black-white issue, like should you kill, should you not kill. Nobody should take away the rights from the mother. However, at times it does feel like nobody is representing the child, as if the child doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt like there's a gray area.
It's a tough line.
It is a tough line. So like for me, I would say...
it's like, I don't think anybody wakes up and says, this is the decision that I want to make because you know what I mean? You have to come to that decision that's tough. Like, if you're going to make that choice.
Do we bear responsibility for I'm going to ask this question. I'm not even sure I've made a conclusion on this, all right? So I don't want to get I'm just asking the question. Do we bear any responsibility for just the randomness of the gender we're born with? And what I mean by this is that if you are a female who hasn't been raped or incest, and there is no health issues tied to why they would get an abortion, should they have to carry the child?
Like, you're asking
just
a normal individual?
A normal individual got pregnant.
They got pregnant on accident.
And it's very inconvenient in their life at the moment.
Again, it just goes back to, like, I'm not living that person's life, and I'm not in their shoes, and I don't know what that child could do for them. It's tough because, like, right, I'm not saying because I'm pro-choice that I'm pro-abortion, but it's like.
But that is a byproduct of it, though.
Right, and it's just not my choice, and I'm not going to make that choice for somebody else.
What about you?
So
Republican.
I think that's
it's tough.
It is very tough. I would not say that I've ever been specifically pro-choice. I would say that I'm like, well, it doesn't affect me. So if it came down to it, and you asked me on a ballot what I want, I would say pro-life, other than in cases of like sexual assault, incest.
Too, yeah,
but it's so tough because it's like you're fighting for your right to be bailed out of your own mistake,
right,
kind of thing.
Right.
And now I will say that I think this is a societal issue, not even from that stance, but from the fact that, like, why isn't there some sort of birth control for men, like other than condoms, right? Why did we put all of the responsibility for birth control on women just because they're the ones that have to carry it? I'm fully in it's a 50-50 camp. And I think that maybe if you're going to allow abortions, maybe the father should have some sort of say in it, unless, it's like sometimes like a one-night stand or whatever.
But even so, if I have a one-night stand with somebody, right? I'm an adult that made a decision.
They deserve to know.
You make a decision. We created life together.
That's a good point.
Now, the problem is that the randomness part that I was talking about, where I was born a male, I cannot reproduce. I cannot have a child.
Right.
All right? You were born a female, you can. I don't know where does my say get this or come in where I get to say I don't believe you should kill or execute that child.
Let's just address the elephant in the room. We're three men sitting around a table talking about women's rights.
Sure,
and that's the issue here, right? All these politicians, like they're old white men that don't know anything.
But that also doesn't mean that we can't talk about it.
No, I'm not saying we can't talk about it, but we have to notice our privilege.
Right, absolutely.
Like we don't have to. I don't have to worry about getting pregnant and have to make that decision.
Fully acknowledge that. However, that is, I mean, there are just certain certainties in life that are just
out of your control. Sometimes.
Out of our control. I mean, life isn't fair. I mean, and I know that's a very tough thing to say, but that is a thing that females live with. They have that opportunity where they can get pregnant. I can't know what that feeling is like, but they do. So is there more responsibility that they need? I don't know. It's a very tough question. It's a very tough line. I've just always felt like Democrats don't do enough to show that there's gray area, and it seems like at times they're so on the other side of it just to be opposite of
and the other thing too about the pro-choice argument is that it also, by repealing that or Roe v. Wade and all these things, it does take away healthcare and birth control options from women.
Yeah, and those absolutely should be
right. Exactly,
away.
But I'm saying
the whole Planned Parenthood, the whole thing.
That's all rolled into it. That's all rolled into the conversation. Right. So you also have to take that in the.
Well, but that's the whole problem with this whole thing is that if you talk about defunding Planned Parenthood,
right?
But it is true that there's so many services that are offered that are not abortions, and But the thing is,
it's rolled into that conversation,
and it should.
But here's the thing, though: it's so much easier to get uneducated people to be aboard an idea if you simplify it and put a name behind what you're trying to stop.
Right. They're like, you hear Planned Parenthood and all the people conservatives associated with is abortions, and that's just not true.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. That's the thing is they're not. Neither party is going after people who are educated and know what they want. They're going after the undecided.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times the undecided are the ones who are uneducated.
Big talking points.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're necessarily undecided or uneducated, but the ones that are uneducated, those are the ones they're going after.
I don't mean I don't necessarily mean uneducated in the terms of you didn't go to school. I mean uneducated in issues.
On that issue, sure. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that no life is more important than the other. It doesn't matter the age. So the female or the child, no one is more valuable than the other one. And in the case of incest or in case of rape,
somebody's health, 8-9 months.
Somebody's health.
I read an article the other day about a woman who she had to carry a dead child to term.
Right, and then the after effects of what that lady is, what that woman is going to have to deal with mentally
because her state wouldn't do the abortion, and it's that's what you're also fighting for, not just the people the average Joe, but those people that are in those situations where it is detrimental to their health, and then nothing can happen.
It's just the silent voice of the child that I just don't feel like there's enough done.
It's a tough conversation, and it's never gonna go away.
I think it could.
You think so?
Before we hit this break, I'll tease you with something, and we'll talk about this off air. We don't need to continue with the abortion talk, but there's a lot of experiments taking place on surrogates, how they can pull the egg out earlier instead of getting an abortion or making the female hold it until adoption. They can pull it out and put it into a surrogate because there's a lot of people that can't have kids that want kids.
There
is some technology coming that might be able to just get rid of this whole abortion talk altogether. So we'll see you on the other side.
I'm Nate Adams of TheOnlyCritic.com, where you can listen each and every week to the Picks and Pans podcast wherever you listen, on Google, Apple, Anchor, wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll be with you. Please subscribe, and you can check out all the latest movie news and movie reviews at TheOnlyCritic.com.
This is Kyle Miller, and you're listening to Bobby Talks.
Hey, welcome back to Bobby Talks, ... You know why those dots are there? Hey, sorry we had to rush off there at the end. I got the camera cut off. Sitting here with Nate Adams and Kyle Miller. Kyle Miller is a Republican voting for a Democrat this time around. Nate Adams, you can clearly tell by the passion and the knowledge. He falls on the left side of things, definitely voting for Joe Biden, and believes him to be a credible candidate this time around. We talked a little bit on non-negotiables. I want to ask you some questions real quick before we get into specifics about what do you look for in a leader, the intangibles that you look for. The question that I asked this question because sometimes what we vote for, what we're forced to vote for, doesn't necessarily match up with what we're looking for. So just kind of start there. What are some of the intangibles? Give me some vague answers. What do you got?
So I think with a leader, you don't necessarily have to know all of your information, but you have to have people that are credible that you can go to for information. You might be able to say, hey, I don't know everything, but I have people that I trust who I think are capable, who can help me make these decisions.
Sure.
I think that's the biggest one. And then, I mean, the ability to, know you have to do the work. I think a leader is someone who does the work with you, not someone who directs you to do the work.
Okay.
And I know that's a little bit different when you get into politics because, it's all like policy and
If
things
they're
like that.
capable, if they're
Right.
capable of doing the job. If not, they're just in the way, right?
Right, exactly. But like being super big into sports, you can tell when someone's a leader and not. You can tell when players want to play for a guy.
Right.
And I think the same thing would happen in politics. I don't know if you ever watched The West Wing or not.
I started watching. I'm season 1 right now.
So HBO Max just did a
30 year
did a special on getting
Why
people
we
to
vote.
vote.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe the most beautiful hour of television I've seen in recent memory. But I think when I started watching West Wing back in 2019. And when I looked at Jed Bartlett, who in the show was a Democrat, I really looked at him and I was like, man, I don't care that he's a Democrat. I would vote for that guy in a heartbeat.
Right.
And obviously it's a fictitious show and,
Right.
and it's dramatized, but I miss having a president that I can look at and be like, that guy's a leader, and I would go to battle for that guy.
Right.
So let me tell you where I'm at on that. So what I look for, right? So everyone knows I'm a film critic, and I see a ton of movies in a year. And I saw a documentary this year of many documentaries. It was called The Way I See It. And it was Pete Souza, who was the chief White House photographer for Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama. So he had unmitigated access for eight years. Just like people, when he walked in the room, people like stood up because they knew Obama was right behind him. Because he was with him every step of the way. Just like, and so there was a moment in that film where in 2012, after the Sandy Hook shooting, Pete was there with everything, and he showed these pictures, and Obama went and visited all these families. He went and visited the families of these victims, of these children that were slaughtered at Sandy Hook, right? And he captured this picture. Obama walks in the room, and there's a mom there, just lost her 5-year-old kid, and she just, and like Obama beelines to her, and just embraces her. He just like grabs her and she just sobs in his arms.
Yeah.
Could you ever see Donald Trump doing something like that? And the answer is no.
No.
And that I want empathy. Somebody who shows some compassion for people that have lost. Even Richard Nixon went and talked to Vietnam protesters. I mean, say what you want about, Richard Nixon is Richard Nixon, but I'm just saying, like, he did that. He did all those things. Like, he was with people, like, even people disagree with, like, and Trump, it's always about him. Even like you listen to how they killed that ISIS leader. He's like, well, I'm not going to get any credit for this. It's like, it's not about you, dude. It's about the people that this impacts, and he can't do it. He can never give up the spotlight. And like the way that Obama like expressed that hurt for people, and you see these videos of Joe Biden going and talking to Parkland's shooting survivors and like being one-on-one with them and just being a person. That's what I want in a leader.
So I think that's an interesting point, because I think that another characteristic that you want of a leader is that they need to have that empathy, and you're not always going to feel good about the decisions that you make. Right. You may know, kind of going back to like the abortion, like that there's people who were raping, things like that. But if you're truly against something, and like you don't want it to happen, you're like, I know that there's going to be outliers, and like I truly feel sorry for them, but like this is like what I truly believe.
Right.
And not so go on Twitter and call people names just because you disagree with them. It's like, who cares? Move on. You don't like them. Who you don't need it. Like, it's unnecessary. You're a leader. Your words matter.
Yeah.
Words matter. That's interesting. Words matter. Let's transition there off of that. We'll go straight into Facebook questions, okay? Because there's been a lot of them. All right, and I kind of want to talk about words mattering here. And it's funny, I do lean left, but I got to tell you, I think another place where the Democrats really messed up with their messaging and their phrasing, because it's confusing to me. I'm going to talk about Anna Alcorta from Facebook here, a friend of mine. She asked me, or she's asking us, stance on law enforcement, defund or not, and why they feel the need to take the money in funds from the law enforcement. This also pertains to me too as a corrections officer and their thoughts on corrections in general. Not many people think of corrections when they think of law enforcement. So let's talk about this idea that came out over the summer on the back of the George Floyd murder again, the protest happening in every major city around the world, but mainly this idea in America of defunding the police. And then what bothers us about Trump is when he says something and then his supporters say, well, that's not what he meant. And then they go down this road of what he actually meant, right? Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that kind of the same thing here when we talk about defunding the police? But that's not what we mean. We just talk about moving the money around.
Reallocating, right.
Why is that the phrasing? Didn't we drop the ball with the way that came out?
Yeah, so I don't actually know where that phrasing came from. Did it come from Twitter or some sort of social media movement?
The term defund
the police.
I think it came from the Black Lives Matter movement.
I mean, it did. We're just not sure where it originated.
Oh, okay, yeah. It just rose up to the ranks.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw that. And so, when I looked at that first, I said, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things about being conservative is I love police. I think it's very, very important to support them.
Sure.
And obviously right now with the climate that there is, it's interesting.
It's even
so I have a close friend who is a Detroit police officer, and then he moved down and he was doing border patrol down in Texas for a while, and now he's back as a police officer here in Michigan again. But so I think that someone made a really good point. And I don't remember where it came from, but defunding the police obviously doesn't mean defunding the police. It means that reallocating other sources, because we expect police officers to be a one-stop shop for everything that comes with some sort of unrest.
It's a heavy burden.
They are not trained enough in terms of psychology, how to deal with certain people, because there's a lot of people who are a danger, but if they had people that knew how to approach those people, a lot of situations could be de-escalated. And I think that's the root cause right here, is that we expect police officers to do everything. Right. They're not trained in behavioral science.
How long did your buddy go to school to get his police? I forget. I don't know what the verbiage is, but
how long did he go to the academy?
How long did the academy last?
That's the problem.
Right.
It's like 6 months a year.
6 months, 9 months.
And then you hear at the debates Donald Trump getting rid of the training on racial profiling things because he said it was racist.
Right.
Which is just if that's a whole other story.
Pot calling kettle black.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So I just think it's really interesting. We're 9 months. Yeah, it's good enough for you to carry around a gun and enforce all of our nation's policies.
I have to go to school for 4 years to be a PE teacher.
Right.
And 9 months to be a police officer.
That's the argument. And so where I'm at on it. So my sister's a corrections officer. She works at one of the highest profile women's security prisons in the state.
Okay.
They house so their job is very important.
The most extreme cases, yeah.
Yeah, and I love my sister, and I love I'm not against police. People say, well, you support defunding the. It's I'm not against law enforcement. I believe that there should be law and order, because
we love law enforcement. We want to help them.
There'd be chaos.
We want to help their job.
And it's a lot about what Kyle was saying. It's this defund the police, right? They want to. The great point. 4 years to be a PE teacher, 9 months to you can go out on the streets and you're going to enforce laws. But this might open up a whole other bag of worms, because the argument is you see these people George Floyd, and you hear the story about this gentleman getting shot 7 times at his car. It's listen, and then of course in these instances they were all African Americans, and I don't know what the response is, but these funds being reallocated to these certain resources might have prevented some of this. And I can't help but think, why is it any police officer's first choice to shoot somebody 7 times before and maybe there's facts that come out about the situation, and people will be quick to tell you, well, why didn't he just comply with law enforcement, and why didn't he just do this? It's just
we wish he would have, but it didn't happen.
Right. And it's just you see the evidence, it's just but why can't we tase somebody? Why can't we just you're gonna I understand officers, they feel like they're in danger and they gotta, but maybe is there something that we could do to prevent that, I guess is the question. And that's where this I can't stand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, is that if it's let me give you an example of me. I've been teaching now, this is my 6th year, right? And I hate to say this, but I do not have the same approach to teaching today as I did on day one. It's not, I'm a little bit more jaded, a little bit more hindered. I still love teaching. I still try every single day to make it about the kids, put on the best face I can, no matter what's going on in my life. You know, it's all about the kids at the end of the day, though. But like, there's a reason in our field we have to have continued professional development training. At the end of my 6 years, like after this year, I'm no longer a teacher if I don't go back and recertify. You don't have to do that when you become a police officer. Day one, after the 9th month or whatever long it takes you, you're in and you're in for life. There's no more professional development training. I mean, I don't want to say that because I'm speaking ignorantly because I'm not in the field. There's definitely briefings and training as they learn in the technology and all those things. There absolutely is. I just mean the psychological element of it. That takes a toll.
Yeah, I can't speak to it, right? I'm not a police officer.
I'm not either.
I don't know what they're doing.
But I do have a couple police officer friends that I've had these conversations with, as have you.
And I should be, what am I to say? You know, it doesn't matter what I don't know what they're doing out there.
I think what I can tell you is that from any police officer that I've talked to, they all agree that they need some sort of help, whether that be more training or they need some sort of like social worker, like maybe police officers should be like cross-trained into like becoming social workers or have some sort of like baseline.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can have social workers also apply to become police and put them through the academy training so that they can be like double trained, right?
It's like a partner you have with you. Be like, okay, well, let's try and de-escalate the situation first.
And let's think about, we all know that there's certain areas where like there's higher crime and then there's more, so like drug abuse, things like that. So you could take those people and kind of allocate them to these like areas that are in need. Right. And so I think that goes, they always talk about police outreach and like going out and like doing these like little fun things to get to know.
Grassroots.
Yeah, exactly. And what helps someone more with grassroots than making it be like, hey, this guy like understands me. Like he knows like I may be like a disenfranchised person, but I'm like still a person. Right. And so I think that's the thing that we kind of overlook.
I think a lot of these times too, you want the appropriate response to match kind of the crime too. When somebody has a counterfeit $20 bill or whatever it might be, you want to make sure that the response to that isn't 4, 5, 6 police officers in this type of intimidating situation.
And in the case of George Floyd, just saying I can't breathe and he's just on his neck for 8 minutes.
And that's a whole other conversation about police conformity.
Right.
But just let me just preface this to anybody that's watching. I have reached out and tried to get a couple of police officers onto the show because I would love to have these conversations and learn more about it. If anybody is willing to, that's watching the show right now, is willing to come on, please do. I know that the reasons the people that I've reached out to could not do it is because they said that their unit or their boss would not want them to come on just because of the timing of everything right now.
Right.
So if anybody is willing to or can, please do. I would love to learn more about this because I first admit I'm pretty ignorant on it. Okay. Let's go to the next one if we can because there's quite a few and I'd like to touch on as many as we can. Brandon Bales, he talks about double standards within the just basically the way we look at Trump versus the way we look at Biden. Maybe I'll just read what he put. If I had to make it into a question and not just a statement, I guess it would be, do you see how double standards such as being against bullying yet shaming our president for his appearance or the way he walks down a ramp, or that the Democratic candidate that was chosen to take on the Republican president that Democrats loathe fits the same shoes as those that they crucify our president for, such as the way he talks to people, having a history of lying, plagiarism, possibly sexism and racism, though not found guilty. Same as the president, yet accepting and standing behind that. I know it is a productive question, I know it's not a productive question, but every topic that these days seems to, something that doesn't make sense there, but every topic these days seems to have me falling into this double standard of some kind. Do you see one?
I mean, that's politics. I mean,
is that the easy answer though? It's just politics?
No. But I'm just saying, like it doesn't matter what politician comes forward. There's always going to be something in their biography that you're going to go back and look on. It's like Joe Biden definitely has a history. He said definitely some questionable things back in like the 70s and things he said about like school integration. It's like that's all there. But I guess the difference is like, do these people learn from it? For me, and I guess does Joe Biden, and he's come out and says like I was wrong. Like I said this, I don't mean it now. I changed my mind.
Sure.
Versus, just like, it just comes down to which candidate, aligns with your views. But then, like, we've had 4 years of Donald Trump, and he never once like admits he's wrong or admits he's done. He was asked if there was anything that he would do or change about his response to COVID as an example, and he said no. And it's like that's not a sign of of a good leader because. And it makes it an easy talking point and make fun of, or whatever the question was being asked. But it's like,
Andrew Cuomo of New York just wrote a book on the things that I would have done differently.
And Trump doesn't like he can't. And I think that was honestly would help his reelection chances if he would have came out after he got COVID and he would have said, I was wrong, wearing a mask, we should have been. If he would have
double down and say best I felt in 20 years.
Changed, no, I mean I'm saying like it might have helped his poll slightly bump up.
Possibly, but I mean you have to think that Donald Trump is also trying to play to the people who feel like they're disenfranchised, and he's playing to the people that think, wearing a mask is stupid. This is like the first step before we're all wearing like burqas and all that, that racist propaganda.
And the double standard, I guess, is just like, what is, who's worse? It's right, because they're both, but like who's worse in that sense? Like,
well, let's admit it, guys. Donald Trump's 1-0. So he's looking at 1-0 right now, and he's with the same tactics that got him that 1-0. Why would I change it? So we know exactly.
But he's not building on his base. He's got his base. His base is not going to.
The question is going to be: has the youth movement been motivated enough to go and vote because they did not vote in the Hillary Trump election?
Or if those third party voters, are they going to just switch to a?
That could be too. But I got to tell you this. So I know I sound like I'm down on the Democrats. It's just because of the nature of the conversation. I feel like I have to kind of represent more of the Republican side today.
I don't know if we answered that question. I don't know. It's just.
Well, I'm going to in a sense. So their double standards absolutely exist. And it's kind of the thing that's pissed me off a little bit about the Democratic Party over the last 4 years. I got to be honest with you. First of all, I am a diehard Obama fan. With that being said, it doesn't mean that I followed and liked every policy he put out. I don't like the backdoor deals that he did to get the Affordable Care Act done. But guess what? I was very proud that he got it done because it was a historical thing that needed to happen. Just the first thing to get in place, to get that health care, to just kind of reshape it, now makes it easier to fix those little things like you talked about, that mandate that was in place to pay that when you didn't have health insurance. You fix it one step at a time after it's been put in place because it was so hard to reform for the longest time. I thought
make tweaks and changes.
Tweaks and changes are now easier because you've put the platform in. The Democratic Party, for me, always seemed to be the people in the room with the most compassion, the people in the room that at least listen to the other side, whether or not you agreed with their policy, because they might be against regulations on guns, and you damn don't like that. They might be against regulations and 35% tax on big corporations. You might not like that. And those are fundamental differences when we talk about Republican and Democrats.
Well, and it's the same thing going on with the stimulus talks right now, too.
Right, but here's the problem, is that I feel like that double standard, he's got a leg to stand on now, because I've always felt the Republican Party, this comes from like the bullying that I've always thought took place a little bit on Fox News, and now you see it take place. MSNBC always did that. They're trash. But now you see it take place in what I always thought was like this classier news media and CNN, and now I find myself just like scoffing at a lot of the things they do because Nancy Pelosi is trash. Like she is absolutely, when COVID happened, she says, go out to Chinatown. Well, that's just as racist as calling it the China virus, right? Because, am I wrong in that? Anybody want to speak on that? Nancy Pelosi, I just feel like they've sold their soul to the devil to play the game that Donald Trump's base did in 2016.
And I'm not the hugest fan of Nancy Pelosi either.
But don't you think that the Democrats have sold? They're now going. They went down to the standards of whether it's the Republican Party or it's just Trump's administration to try to beat him. When instead of taking the high road, like Michelle Obama said, and beating him, letting him beat himself in 4 years, and then we'll get him out of office. Because I think those double standards do exist now.
I don't really have like a simplified answer to this. I think that a lot of our problems in our society stem from the two-party system, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, and like, this is like a society issue. Like, think about like what trends on social media right now. It's when people have like these savage moments, right, where they say something like to clap back at someone else.
Cancel culture.
Like, that cancel culture is the biggest reason why I will never consider myself a liberal or a Democrat.
Sure.
No matter how many like social issues I might align myself with Democrats, I can't stand the cancel culture, man. I think the biggest mistake that we make is not the biggest mistake. There's a lot of mistakes. One of the mistakes that we make as a society is judging our past figures on today's standards.
Yes.
Right. So like we were talking about, like Joe Biden has said like certain things.
Yeah.
But is like tear down monuments, whatever. Like that's fine.
It just depends. Yeah, well, and I don't think we should tear down like all the, but stuff like Robert A. Lee, like the Confederacy. It's like, why are we celebrating that? It's like, and people's like, well, it's our history, we should celebrate. It's like, dude, but like they lost, and B, it was built on the foundation that we want to break from the Union because we need to keep our slaves.
People hold on so hard to something that was around for what, like 10 years or something like that.
I'll say it here, Confederacy's a joke. I'm gonna say it right here live.
It's a way for people to be able to posture like to other people.
Christopher Columbus Day, come on.
So you say it's a joke, but there's still people that live in those just as much as African.
Because they have a president that fuels them.
Well, they do, right? But even before this president, they were still those people.
Yeah,
right?
but they were not as alt-right extremists that we've seen. It's Richard Spencer's and the Lauren Southerns.
Isn't it interesting though, like how we're supposed to be this like unified country, but we have this subset of people who just never really bought into what the North had, right? Like ever since Abraham Lincoln, regardless of how long we have been a united states of America, they've never bought into the way that we think, right? Yeah. So like honestly, you could take Texas and probably a lot of the Southeast, and like they would be their own country.
We're not part of the United States anymore.
All right, let's take one more here, and then I want to get into the election. All right, because we're about 8 minutes away here. This question comes from Dylan Holt. How do you feel about the progressive parties, talking about Democrats, how do you feel about the progressive Democratic Party continuing to push old, rich politicians like Clinton, Biden, and Pelosi for positions of power rather than elevating the progressives such as Pete Buttigieg, AOC, or Cory Booker? If they really are the party of progressive, why do we continue to play the party game or the political game?
It's a generational thing, I think.
So, all right. So I'm going to pull another Aaron Sorkin thing out of here. I don't know if you guys have watched the Newsroom, but that
Newsroom's great.
That opening monologue, before he gets the monologue, when he's talking about, he says, if liberals are so fucking great, how come they lose so goddamn always?
Yeah.
It's because, okay, and this is my more conservative side starting to come out here. I think that liberals for so long have tried so hard to push so far and push people so far out of their comfort zone that they resist, right? It's just like anything when you were like a teenager and if your parents are like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, it's like, fuck you, I'm gonna go do this, right? So they are trying to fundamentally change who people are and like get them to think in a different way. So here's my thing, as a conservative, I've never hated liberals or Democrats because I truly believe that they are always doing what is in their heart, like the right thing to do,
right?
And I've always had respect for that. But they go about it so wrong.
What should they do? Because I've always thought up until the last 4 years, they lose elections because they take the high road.
Yeah, I mean,
I know that contradicts what I talk about because I don't.
That reasoning alone would explain why Donald Trump, won the election. Right?
Well, But go ahead. I think if Obama could have ran a third time, he would have won easily.
I think so too. I think Barack Obama was one of those like weird situations where like, I mean, he was the first president that like I really like remember his policies, and like even as a conservative, I was like, you know what, goddamn, if I wouldn't sit down and have a beer with Barack Obama, like
he was a transcending president,
seemed like a cool dude,
exactly.
And he didn't even like
he bridged gaps.
Yeah. Even he hired James Comey, and James Comey was a Republican. He's like, he walks in the door, he says, I voted for John McCain and supported Mitt Romney. He's like, yeah, I don't care, I know you're the best person for this job,
right?
Like that. It's for Obama. It wasn't about loyalty. It was about what was best and ethical. For Trump, he's like, I gotta have demand loyalty. You go against me, we're gonna get rid of you.
Right, and like bipartisanship should by far and away take precedent over anything. And like again, that's why I think that there's problems with the two-party system.
Eulogy at like John McCain's funeral, like stuff like that. Like,
But so to specifically answer your question, I think the reason that Democrats have to go with those people is because they know that these younger people like AOC, like there's not a person on the fence who would probably vote for AOC because they think she's fucking insane.
Over the age of 60, for sure.
I think that AOC is fucking insane. It's
too emotional based. It's too emotional based.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But the question is that are they? Yeah, I mean, you're right. The question is, can Pete Buttigieg, AOC, or Cory Booker beat Donald Trump in the election?
I don't. I mean, to be honest, when you're talking about Buttigieg, there's no way that America is ready for a gay president.
It's just, I guess in this instance, though, it's like it didn't matter who I think it didn't matter who got the nomination. I just think it was it's vote blue no matter who because we got to get rid of Donald Trump. So
Right.
so in this particular election, possibly just because the base would have rallied around whoever was the nominee.
What the Democrats always do is they say, all right, fuck who these people want. Let's pick who we think can beat
Correct.
the Republicans.
Bernie Sanders should have been the, and damn well might have been the president today.
I 100% agree with you. But the problem is
Hillary
that
Clinton was a terrible choice in 2016.
yes, and so I didn't vote in 2016. So like this whole like me voting liberal this time, it's not totally unforeseen because I couldn't bring myself to vote for Donald Trump
or Hillary Clinton.
because here's why. Because I had a social studies teacher back in high school that I very much respect.
And you're probably not alone. There's probably a lot of people that didn't. There's
Which is
55%, I think, of people population voted. So hopefully, I think it's going to change this year.
Yeah.
so. I know you want to tell a story.
Yes, go ahead.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to hear the story off air.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll keep this running. We'll hear the story on the podcast version. You won't get it on the video. What I want to do is give you 1 minute to tell me who's going to win the election, not who you're voting for. Who's going to win the election and why? Give you a minute, and then we'll conclude this.
All right. So I honestly think Biden's going to win. I think the fact that I don't think this would have happened if it wasn't for COVID, but the fact that we're granting so much ease of access for voting now, I think there's a lot of people who are in lower income who can't easily get out to vote because it's your shift workers, people that can't get out to vote, can't get bus rides, to wherever. The ease of access for voting is going to be so unprecedented this year that people who are in
We've already set a record. Yeah.
This is my minute, excuse me.
Sorry. I'm speaking.
I think that the people who would a lot of times vote Democrat but are unable to do so because of their circumstances, they're going to be given that opportunity this time.
Yep.
And whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, whether you're Independent, that is so fucking beautiful,
Yep.
right? Because this is exactly what our country was supposed to be founded upon, and that's it. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying 20 seconds, but yeah.
Oh, God. Well, so
Biden wins. Close or not close?
Very close.
Okay.
Well, it's tough, right? Because we're here talking, we've been obvious about who we want to win, and I'm with you, Kyle. And then people might say, well, we're that vote. It's like, of course we want our candidate to win. We think they're going to win, and I do think it is going to be close. But I've been watching the polls, and people say, well, you can't do that. But if you think about people like you didn't vote in 2016. There was a lot of those people, and there was a lot of people that there was. In 2016, there was about 50% of voters were undecided, right? And then the whole James Comey email thing happened, and people lied to pollsters. They made up their minds in that last week, and they voted for Trump, and that's what got him elected. It's 7% now. 86% of the population know who they're going to vote for, and I just have to believe, like what we're seeing, there's a movement coming. And plus in 2018, the polls were really, really accurate in predicting who was going to win the Senate races.
And yeah.
And then we saw what happened. So yeah, I think Joe Biden's got it. And I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be, I think it might be by a lot.
Okay. So I'll say this, COVID, and then take that, and you have the Black Lives Matter movement, which ignited a youth movement. I think the youth movement puts it over the top. I think I'm going to hold my answer until after I get done talking with the Republicans Party next week. Ladies and gentlemen, Nate Adams, Kyle Miller, we really, really, really appreciate you guys watching this. For those of you that made it to the very end, subscribe. Damn it, subscribe. Hang on, Podcast Nation. We're going to hear Kyle Miller's story about a social studies teacher. Everybody else, thanks for being here. See you on down the road. Cool.